Well, welcome to the Everyday Discernment Podcast. My guest this week is Joshua Broome. Joshua is a husband, a father, and a pastor. He is an ex-adult film star who was radically changed by the power of Jesus Christ, and he lives today as a testimony of the goodness of God and shares that hope with others that he meets. Joshua, welcome to the program. How are you?
Man, I'm so glad that we finally sorted this out. We've been trying to do it. I'm glad to have the opportunity to share my story.
Yeah, man, I'm glad too. And that's just sometimes how interviewing works, but I'm glad we can get this in before you have a baby on the way. I think in a week from now, which by the time people listen to this, you'll already be in the world. And so tell us a little bit before we go back to your story, just kind of who you are and your family and kids and stuff like that.
Yeah. So my wife and I have been married 5 years today. So today is our
Awesome.
anniversary, and we have three boys. Cannon is our oldest. He just turned 3 the 11th of this month. So July is jam packed because my birthday is the 26th. So just a big party. So by the time my birthday comes around, it's kind of, I'm old. That's okay. But we have a 3-year-old in Cannon. Lincoln is 1. So he turned 1 in March. And then Judah will be here, whenever this might come out. But she's set to be induced August 24th. So she's measuring a little bit early. So he looks like he's going to be a little bit bigger than our other 2 little boys, as based on what you can construct through, ultrasound. But
he's anxious to get in the world, huh?
Yeah. And man, I had an incredible opportunity. The last season of my life, I was a pastor at Life Church in Moore, Oklahoma. And that was a great season. And then that really equipped me to do what I'm doing now. And that's what we believed. We were moving to Iowa to plan a physical location. And then, it happening in the middle of COVID made that somewhat difficult. And it has become more of an online, me traveling and partnering with as of right now. But we do, as of right now, fingers crossed, Easter of next year, we will launch our physical location right outside of Iowa City, Iowa. But it's been incredible to see what God has done in my life. The fact that I was in the adult film industry, almost 10 years ago. And then today I've been married for 5 years. We have, 3 kids, and I've been in full-time ministry for 2 years. It's just, it's a really humbling reminder of all the things that God has done in my life and the provision that I never saw coming. Yeah.
That's so cool. And you're blown up on social media. I think you have close to 150,000 followers on TikTok at the time of this, and Instagram as well has a bunch. And it's really powerful, when you hear just even a short clip of your testimony, the way you start them and then kind of grabs them in, like, I want to hear more. And then it's such a good testimony that, hey, this is who I was, but because of Jesus, this is who I am now. And that's why it's so powerful. So take us back to just kind of growing up, what was your life like? What influences did you have? Did you know about Jesus? Like, what was your childhood like?
Yeah. I specifically love what you're passionate about, and it's discernment and aligning your life with a life that, if I remain in the vine, my life will bear fruit, but apart from it, so my life, I knew a lot about God. I grew up, so my mom had me when she was 16. I grew up in a very, very small town in South Carolina. And, my mom was 16, so she was still living with her parents. So I grew up at my grandmother's house, my grandparents' house. So my grandmother, grandpa, my mom, her sister, and her 2 brothers. Like that's how I grew up. But everyone went to church. Everyone, they didn't have like a legalistic approach to it, but we went to church and we talked about God and we prayed. But for me, somewhere along the line, I never understood the fact that I needed a relationship, an independent dependency on Jesus myself. Yeah. I saw it mirrored like in their lives, but I, for some reason, never thought like, well, that's something that is available to me. Right. But my grandmother, she died last year of COVID. So she was going through chemo. struggling. And then she ended up contracting COVID, and it was just more than her lungs could handle. And the sadder part of the story, and what in addition to, is that, so she died on a Wednesday. My grandfather at that point was fine. He got COVID, and then he died on a Sunday.
Oh, wow.
So, but that's where I grew up. So I grew up with him, and so the town being so small, I knew who my dad was. So I knew I had a father, and I knew who he was. I knew his name. I knew what he looked like. But he never was my dad.
Yeah.
Like, we never had any, like, I've probably had, at this point, probably 20 interactions with him in my life. And probably 10 of them has been in the last 5 years.
Wow. Yeah.
So just knowing this person that is, my father, but not having a relationship with him, that left me feeling, what's wrong with me? Why is this person? Because I see him, essentially become an adult, get married, have kids who were, just a few years younger than me. And then I see, and they were very well off financially, and we were not. And that caused some jealousy, but just a lot of me feeling like, man, why not? Why not me? Why would you not want a relationship with me?
Right.
And by no means did I grow up unloved. My mom's incredible. So she's always worked in the restaurant industry. I've never went without anything. We struggled, but for knowing what I know now, I can't comfortably say that anything less that I grew up with an incredible mom, very loved, very good. Not, I never at any point did I need anything and not have it.
Yeah.
But I started modeling when I was 14, 15. Up until that, it was everything was sports, and then modeling entered the picture when I was 14 or 15. And I had a lot of success in that. And that kind of fed this, I'm a high achiever. So it's just I still am. It's man, just a legal notepad or a sticky note, just scratching through a to-do list, fires me up. I love it. But yeah, just that fed this false ideology that I had, where if I accomplished this, I would feel affirmed, and that would prove to me that I was good enough.
Yeah.
And that was a pattern that just really continued in my life. So it was through modeling, through academic achievement, through sports. I always wanted to be the best, and if I wasn't, I beat myself up. I was really hard on myself.
Yeah.
That through high school. Then I go to college. I'm studying theater. I'm still modeling. I'm having more success modeling, but still relationships with girls. How well I'm doing in this area of my life. How well I'm doing in that area of my life. That was how the level of my emotional well-being was indicative of me having tangible success on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was kind of that up until, 20, right before I turned 21, right when I turned 21. And then I ended up dropping out of college the second semester of my, would be sophomore year. And I moved to Hollywood, and did that because a lot of reasons, there was a lot of factors leading up to that, but ultimately I was very dissatisfied with what my life looked like, and I was having success modeling. And I believed, man, if I put myself in proximity of where all the jobs are, it's man, I'm a 6'2", 200-pound, hazel-eyed, brown-haired dude that looks like half the industry that I was in. There was nothing unique about me. So if I'm if I'm going up against this person that lives in Los Angeles, in contrast to me living in South Carolina, they're probably hire the guy they don't have to fly in. So I that started to happen. I was man, I had people telling me, just move out there, do it for summer or whatever. And I thought like, just why not? So I dropped out of school and got in my, I don't know what I was thinking, but I dropped out of school. I sold my car for some
Oh,
reason.
wow.
I didn't think I needed a car in Los Angeles, which was like completely idiotic, you know?
Yeah.
But I sell my car and I moved to Los Angeles. And then like right off the bat, I quickly realized that this is not going to be as easy as I thought.
Yeah.
And I definitely regretted needing the car, but
That was before Uber.
yeah. Yeah. And I mean, this was like, this was 2006. So it's like, I don't even know if like Uber was a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I ended up out there and I had some success. I signed with an agency, but like nothing good enough or consistent enough where like, man, I feel comfortable living off of this. So like many people in Los Angeles, I needed to get a job to, make ends meet.
Right.
And I got a job at a like steakhouse / bar type of deal in the middle of West Hollywood. And it was there where I was waiting tables. And I mean, I had a healthy like friend circle. And I think something pretty unique about my story is that like, yes, I grew up without a dad and I didn't feel affirmed. But it's like, man, like everyone I talked to that said yes to the porn industry, it's like, so like not everyone, but very often it's like severe trauma. It's like abuse or, it's like, or there was some need financially or something like that. My life was great. To be completely transparent, there was no reason for me to say yes to it. But I'm working in this restaurant, a group of pretty girls sit down on this table. I go out, I'm going to get a big tip from them. I'm going to smooze them. Maybe I'll ask them for their number.
Right.
And they say, hey, have you ever thought about acting? And I was like, actually, I'm an actor, like, and they're like, no, we're talking about adult films. And I was like, I'm an adult. I don't know how old you think I am, but I mean, I'm of age. And they're like, no, we're talking about porn. And I was like, I mean, I was pretty flabbergasted. I mean, I was like, I've watched it, but I never thought about being in it. Like, what does that practically like look like? And I was like, why would I do that? I don't know. Like in that moment, it just sounded so, because like when I had watched porn, like I like saw it as something like, this is not something that exists. It's just like fantasy land.
Sure.
And like, so seeing people who were in it, like I didn't recognize them or anything like that, but they're saying, hey, would you want to do this? I was like, I don't know. I don't know. And they're like, well, we would just love to invite you to come have a meeting with our agent. I was like, sure, what could that hurt?
Right.
And like in my head, because of the picture that I'd painted for like what porn was, I believed like, man, I must be going to like a Motel 6 and there's going to be this sketchy guy like with a notepad saying, what sign this, whatever. I don't know. But then I it's in Studio City and it's adjacent to the entrance of where you go to Universal Studios.
Oh, wow.
And it's like giant like business complex. And you go in this separate elevator and I go up this elevator and you're walking down this hall and everything is pristine. And I walk into this office and there's this guy sitting here at this giant desk with a double Windsor tie and he's bald, he's English, and he's like, and like me, like I didn't realize how insecure I was. And I heard someone specifically speak to those insecurities within minutes. He's like, asked me 2 or 3 questions. And he's like, hey, there's not a lot of good looking guys in the industry. And I know that you moved out here to make something of yourself. And I believe you can be really famous in this capacity. Like you have ability, and the way that the adult film industry is going, they're making these big movies. And because you have acting ability and you're a good looking guy, you're going to get all the roles. So you can be as famous and you can make as much money as you could ever want.
Yeah.
And it's like, It's like, well, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't like in that moment. It was like what he was saying. It's like, again, it was like if someone's like, hey,
Yeah.
Tim, I'm going to give you $1 million. It's like, okay, sure. Sounds great. But it's
Yeah.
like, I can't, if you had $1 million laid out on the table, it would be really hard to like fathom like what that would look like or what that would feel like getting that. And that's kind of how I felt. It never felt real. So I said, okay, sure. And he's like, okay, so this is how it's going to work. So you'll do one scene and that will be in some constructs an audition. You'll get compensated for it, $500. You'll get compensated for it. You'll get paid that day, and you'll sign a contract before, you'll sign a contract with that production company. That's a 1-day contract, and you sign away all rights to, well, I don't think he used that verbiage, but he's like, you'll sign a contract and, you'll sign a contract and then, you'll do the movie.
Yeah.
But first we're going to send a town car to pick you up. And there is this place where everyone gets tested. So something that he did talk about, he's like, so when it comes to STD and AIDS, there's a really tight, testing procedure that you have to go through, and there's parameters to it, and there's boundaries as far as like how the longevity of your test. So your test can only be at maximum 21 days old. Everyone gets tested at the same place, so the data is consistent. It's like just really like selling me on like, hey, this is safe,
right?
No big deal. So sends the car to pick me up. I go, I do the blood and urine test. Didn't really think much about it. And like, to be completely honest, like, gosh, like I've lived a very frivolous life up to that point anyway. So it's like, it's good that I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And then the next day I'm supposed to do this movie or whatever. And my test doesn't come back. And I think like, this is a good opportunity to like, just like not having the cognitive, like, wherewithal, like needing discernment or having the opportunity to have discernment, because my test didn't come back. So God given me an opportunity. I didn't see it like this then, but
Yeah.
God gave me an opportunity not to do the thing that was going to lead me
Right.
towards disaster. But what did I do? I was like, well, it didn't come back. So what do I do? He's like, well, sometimes there's just a slight delay or whatever. It's like they send the blood work out and then they get it back. And then later that day it came back and everything was fine. And so the next day they're like, well, we pushed it back a day. I just really want you to do it because that way we know what we're going to do going forward. And I get to set, and I'm thinking someone's going to hand me a camcorder and I'm going to go like in a room like that. That's what I had in my head.
Right.
But the experience that I had in the porn industry is very different than some people. It's like, I only worked with, and not to like try to boast or try to like say that this is better than
Glorified
anything
or
else.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah. So just my experience, I only worked with the top companies in the industry. So I didn't experience a lot of the very like grimy things that I would hear
right.
From other people. But I get to this set, and that's what I'm assuming. I'm assuming here's this camcorder, go do it, bring it back to me. I get on the set, and it looks just as big or bigger than any other set that I've ever been on. There's production assistants. There's sound guys. But there's these like, there was this like almost like a just like a big circle of Kino flows. These are all these lights around this little like day bed. And then there's a camera 1, camera 2, and there's someone like shooting BTS. And so that's behind the scenes. And so it's like, wow, there's 3 cameras. There's someone holding a boom mic. There's even AD on set.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like I was already nervous, but now I'm like, careful. What is this? Like, where's it is this even like is this porn? What is this? And someone came up to me and they were like, hey, we're going to need you in, 15 minutes. Here's a Viagra. If you want to take it, do. If you don't, just toss it. You've already touched it, so it's yours. I would suggest biting it in half if you've never taken it before. And I was like, I don't know, like, what's going to happen to me if I take this, but you're telling me that I need it. And I don't even know if, like, I want to do this. And there's just like this tension. And they were like, okay, about 5 minutes, we're going to need you. And before this, I've already, like, the very first thing you would do, you would sign the paperwork. You would, they would give a copy of 2 IDs, and you would show, you wouldn't even show the person. You just give your test for someone to give the other person. Like, at no point was there any interaction between me and the person that I was going to do this scene with. I didn't meet them until it happened.
Right.
And so there's this tension building, and I'm just like, am I going to do this? Like, terrified. And it's like, and there's this like guilt like welling up in me before I even do it. It's like, I know that I shouldn't do this.
Right.
And then it's like, and so like, and like,
is it like, I've come this far, like, why stop now type of thing? Yeah.
And like, for me, yeah, it's like I've already went to the party. Someone's already handed me a cup. How am I going to say no to, when someone asks if you want some beer off the keg? Like, how am I going to say no? I've already showed up. I've already taken the cup. I have the cup in my hand. What am I going to do? Yeah. And me, it's like, I've already showed up. I've already did all this stuff. And like, in that, if you would encapsulate my story in, a phrase or just like a moment, it was like, man, I did one thing, and that created a distorted reality, or I created my own like plausible reality day by day, scene by scene, that distorted view on myself, life, and how I was, to interact with the world. But I was like, in that, like, what else am I going to do? Yeah. So I go to the bathroom, I pop the whole pill and drink some water. And then I walk up to the bed, and then it I feel like, I don't remember a second of it, but it happens. And I'm like in a vehicle going home with a check in my hand. I'm just like, and I felt
it's like dirty. It wasn't you or something.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, yeah. Like, it was almost like I was watching myself in a dream.
Yeah. That's interesting. I want to stop real quick and listening to your story, you hear so many points where there was a discernment moment, right? And a lot of people, when they find themselves on a different trajectory in their life, 5-10 years down the road, wondering how you got there. Well, it was actually hundreds, if not thousands, of tiny decisions that got you there. Yeah, you can make one bad decision in the moment, but a lot of times when you talk about it, especially extreme examples, it's not just one decision. It's a history to lead you to that moment. And that's what I hear from your story is like, yeah, you almost even knew it was wrong, but you still went through with it. And then you found yourself in a point where it's almost a point of no return. It felt like, I'm sure. So if you could take us like on a higher level, like now you're in the industry, what were some discernment points for you when you were in it, and how did you kind of get out of that?
Yeah. I mean, like, what was wild is like, I went from that moment to it being 5+ years later. And then I'm standing there looking at myself. Like, I say this joke almost like to mask the pain of it, but it's like, I was literally looking myself in the mirror, and I was like, I was a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude. Like, that's who I was. I looked at the mirror and I saw a reflection of a person that I did not know. And I'm genuinely asking myself, how did I get here? Because my life became so monotonous. It was because I'm a creature of habit, like, to this day. I love routines. I love planning. I love doing the same thing. I love, I eat the same thing for breakfast, like, more often than not. So for me, I had a schedule. I had a routine. And like, because like the thing that caused me to have the most success in the industry is because, like I said, it was full of broken people. And for me, like, my brokenness is almost like, it was like I was exhibiting this like malicious behavior where I'm okay with hurting just because this is just what life is. So
Yeah.
there's no return from it. So I just like stayed in this, this I'm gonna do what I need to do on the outside, and I'm going to seem happy, and I'm going to say yes when my PR team asked me to go, and
Sure. That was your life. That's what you knew at that point.
and it's like it was like I forget what Levi Lesko book it is, but he's talking about like how when you go on a date, you often are never yourself. You are the version of yourself that you believe that the person sitting across of you wants you to be.
Sure.
So you put on this mask, and then all of a sudden, if you wear that mask all the time goes by, and then that relationship gets more serious, and maybe you get married and move in together, or maybe you go through it like a very like an irresponsible way, where it's like you move in together like after 3 months and all of a sudden you're pregnant. But what happens is you're laying there beside this person and they don't know you. They know this version of you that you pretended to be.
Right.
And now have the stress and the weight of wearing this mask all the time. So you're hurting because you can't even be yourself, and you definitely can't be transparent and honest.
Yeah.
So like that's where I was. I wore the role of this person so much and so often that it felt uncomfortable for me to be around genuine friends. Like any kind of authentic relationship, I wanted it away from me because it felt foreign. So I started pushing my friends away. Then I started pushing my family away.
Mm.
And because of the way that I saw myself, because I felt ashamed, Genesis 2, Adam and Eve, they're walking, they're naked, there's no shame. Genesis 3, sin enters the picture, and then we're ashamed. They were ashamed. They were hiding with fig leaves. They were covering up. They were hiding from God.
Yeah.
And I was guilty. I was ashamed. I wanted to hide. I didn't want the people who I genuinely care about to see me because I saw myself as dirty.
Mm.
And I rejected them. So I stopped answering the calls. I unfriended people that I knew on social media. And then, really quickly, I was living my life where not one person was calling me by my real name. So what shattered that reality is like probably a year goes by, no one's calling me by my real name. And I'm completely isolated myself to the point where I'm in a pretty deep, dark depression. To the point where I was nominated for Best Male Performer 3 times. And the year I won it, they call my name to walk on stage to get the award at the end of the night. That was the biggest award. That was the biggest deal. And they call my name. They call my name. They call my name. I'm not there. I'm at home crying my eyes out on my face,
Wow.
asking God that I didn't know, that I don't have the guts to kill myself, but I don't want to see tomorrow because I don't believe that there's a tomorrow to live for.
Wow.
There's no woman that's going to want to be with me. There's no business that I can contribute to. I've ruined my life. I'm stuck. There's nothing that I can do. And I felt like that for so long.
Mm.
And then I walk into a bank one day and I'm I'm depositing a check that I'm humiliated about depositing, and every time I could, I would do it at the ATM or just drop the envelope in, because the thing was there was a memo on the check that says what it was for.
Oh yeah.
So I didn't want to deal with that because I was ashamed.
Right.
I couldn't get past at this point, so I was like, I'm slightly OCD, so it's like I like holding on to a check like just drives me insane. So it's got ASAP. Praise God for God moving through technology and having a mobile deposit and things like that. But I was like, I had to do this transaction in person, and I had them to check. I couldn't remember my account number or whatever. So she asked me for my PIN. I do the PIN. So we do this whole transaction. She gives me the receipt, and I pivot to walk away, and she says, "Joshua, is there anything I can do for you? Joshua, can I help you?" And like, I have chills right now. Just
Yeah.
like, I heard my name. It is almost like when she spoke my name, it shattered my reality. It shattered this fog that I was living in.
Yeah.
It shattered the plausible reality that the way that I saw life. And it hurt bad. And then I scurry home, and I'm looking at myself in the mirror, and I'm weeping, and I'm confused. And I'm just like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know I can't go back.
Mm.
So I pick up the phone and I quit. I call my agent, and I'm like, hey, I'm not going back. Are you not feeling well? You're not gonna be able to like work later this week or whatever. I was like, no, I'm done. I quit.
Wow.
And then he was like, well, you're under a contract with a company. You're going to have to, you've been receiving checks and like, this increment, and, you're going to have to pay. I was like, I don't care. I'm done. And then I contact my PR person, and I'm like, hey, do a release. I'm done. And I was like, and that was it. I mean, that happens, and I quit. And most people hear my story and they believe that happens. I become a Christian, and life is awesome.
Yeah.
And what really happened was, so that was 2012. So up until 2015, sure, externally my life looked so much different, so much better. And I probably, carried myself like, man, I have this weight off my shoulder, but I was dying inside. Because the placebo that was allowing me to live this life was I was making a tremendous amount of money. I was, I had fame, I had all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it can often be misconstrued when I do these TikTok videos where I say, I was in the industry for 5+ years. I won Performer of the Year. I made all this money. And it's because I want people to know this. Everything that I believed, once I achieved this thing, I would feel happy. I would feel fulfilled. I did it. I achieved it. I traveled the world. I did all this stuff. And I was more miserable. I was hurting to the point where I didn't want to live.
Wow.
And when I had all those things, and that's what I want people to know, like many of the things that people say, if I have this, I'll be happy. If I have this, I wouldn't struggle with anxiety or stress. If I have this, if I could do this, or if I, had, this many partners or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's a lie. And that's why I want to be just radically transparent when I tell my story. Yeah. And obviously there's a time and a place for that. But man, Tim, I want people to know that like they're chasing after something that's going to lead to a dead end.
Yeah. Well, I think we do that on a big scale, with people that are celebrities. I wish I could be a movie star or a music star. And we also do it on a small aspect in our lives. Like you're saying, like if I just had, a spouse, then my life would be so much better. If I just had more kids, less kids, if I could just get to retirement, if I could just take that vacation I wanted, if I could just, then I would be happy. And like you're saying, whatever we identify as happiness is like a fleeting feeling sometimes when we're putting our hope in something that will go away, because the vacation will go away, the kids will grow up, the spouse may or may not like you down the road. Like there's all these things that we have to put. And that's why we're getting to this point of putting your faith in Jesus, because he'll never leave you or forsake you. And the foundation in him is what's going to be strong through the storms of life. And so we really have to kind of adjust our thinking on what is happiness and what am I searching for? And that's so easy to do when you're young and you don't know what you're looking for and you just want to kind of get the notoriety. But like you're saying, it's like the dream that you're chasing, if it's not from God, is going to lead you down a place where you don't find that fulfillment. And you hear this from movie stars and rock stars that live the life and later down the road, they're like, I was depressed. And that's why you see just suicides in general, because people like, I just want a quick way out, especially in a year like 2020, when there's so much isolation and depression. So that's such a good point. And so when was that breakthrough moment for you, when you realized that there's got to be more? You knew about God, but when did he really break through to your life?
Yeah. So luckily I had a very small background in health and fitness. So strength conditioning, like in that field. So it's like, I have no, like, I think something that if anyone would be listening to this, or something that I would say to someone that is currently in any capacity of the, sex industry, where like any capacity, regardless if it's you are making money from OnlyFans or you are doing porn, it's at the end of the day, it's all the same.
Yep.
And so if you're there, man, you just need to know that, like we're talking about, like, happiness is situational, but joy is something that's bigger than yourself.
Right.
And it doesn't change. And like for me, what led to that big change was me just having that opportunity to be a personal trainer. And then I worked my way up, and it was like, I appreciated hard work. And I worked my way up into, in that gym. And then I had an opportunity to go to another gym where, because at that point I was working at Whole Foods full time, and I was working at a gym, because what really wiped me out was taxes the following year after I left the industry. The last year I was in the industry, I made almost like $275K, and then I had to pay taxes on it when I was making 40. So obviously that was not a good deal.
Yeah.
But I get to that point, it's like I'm struggling, but I'm making it. But at the same time, I'm like fighting with the reality that, man, I'm still lying. I'm lying to everyone I meet, because I don't want to deal with what I did. I just want to sweep in the rug. I'm not doing what I used to do. So I just want to leave it alone. But the reality is the internet is real. And I had done 1,000+ movies that are partitioned into 10,000 pieces of, documentation all over the place. And it was just something that I couldn't run from. So I'd lie, and it would come to the surface, and I would have to deal with it. And I lost relationships, nearly got fired, several times. Just not being honest and transparent, like, really cost me a lot. And it honestly hurt a lot of people. And that I did that for about 2 years. And then, but people keep believing in me. I mean, that is a big attachment to my story. Like, people giving me chances and seeing something in me bigger than I saw myself. And it's like, I had people seeing potential in me and having opportunities. So it's like, I work in one gym. I have an opportunity to leave that gym and work at another gym full time. So I don't have to work at Whole Foods anymore. And then, like, things are going pretty well for me, but still there's, like, at a heart level, just like really struggling. And I meet this person, and they're like, for me, it's like, I'm a good old Southern boy. So I thought, it's like the workout was over. It's like, hey, I'll put your equipment away. And she was like, get out of here. And I'm like, I can put my own stuff away. I was like, wow, excuse me. At the same time, I was like, man, I'm in love. It's like, wow. I was like, and after I was like, hey, is there any way that we could go out? Or she's like, no, but I mean, we can go for a run. I was like, okay, I'll take what I can get. And we were going to meet, and we're going to go for a run at this trail. And I'm sitting there waiting on her to get there. And I just had this sick feeling, this like knot, like, in my throat, just like, I'm nervous, but I feel conviction for the first time. I feel like, man, this is an incredible person. I don't want to lie to them. I don't want to hurt them. And then I'm struggling with, man, if I tell her this, she's going to reject me. Of course she is. But I was like, I couldn't be okay with not telling her the truth. So I'm like, hey, can we just walk? She was like, sure. And I'm like, I sit there for 5 minutes, and like, hey, let me tell you how bad I am. I did a little bit of porn. Then I'm like, okay, no, tell her the truth. Like, okay, I did a lot of porn. And then it's just like everything I'd been suppressing for so long, just like flooded out.
Wow.
And at the end of that, she just listened, didn't really ask a lot of questions. And she was like, that's, shocking, because that's not knowing what I know about you. I would never, I couldn't see you doing that.
Yeah.
But do you, just out of curiosity, do you know God? Like, do you know who it is? I'm like, yeah, I believe God created everything. And like, at that point in my life, I went through the struggle of I'm hearing things from other people, and it's like, what makes sense? And, my brother is a genetics professor, and she's like, I'm like, I know all this stuff, but I was like, yeah, I believe that time, space, and matter came into existence at the same time, and there had to be an intelligent designer outside of that. So like,
Right.
yeah, God exists, and He created everything. So sure. She's like, well, do you know Him? Like, do you have a relationship with Him? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, no, like, I'm sure someone has asked me that it to some point in my life. I'm sure I've heard it or someone asked me to it, but at that point, it was like I heard that for the first time. But I'm reminded of, I say this a lot. So two things are through the lens that I look at a lot of things, and like communication and things that I do. But a statement that John Maxwell says, no one cares what you know until they know that you care.
Yeah, I love that.
And then Colossians 4:6, let your speech be gracious and seasoned with salt, so you might know how you ought to answer each person. Yeah. Each interaction matters. And what she did is, through the way that she interacted with me, she ushered me into the presence of God and broke down some boundaries that I had, because I had some some presuppositions about like, what would that conversation look like? What, like, how am I on this earth, and how can I have a relationship with God? And she had it so, like, she didn't judge me. And then that was the end of the conversation in that regard. And then she asked me, she was very lovingly asked me things about my family, asked me like, what did I want to do? Like, what is my plan for my life? What, like, asking me intentional questions, like treating me like, yeah, I heard what you said, but that's not who you are. So
that was powerful at the time, huh? And so then that kind of started you on the right path, huh?
Oh, well, I mean, for me, like, it was like, I have a very like healthy, like, skepticism when it comes to all things. It's like, I want to know the nuances of everything. It was like, man, there's this relationship that she asked me if I had, and she said that she had one. I'm not sure if I have it. I don't think I have it. Do I have a relationship? What does that mean? What does that look like?
Yeah.
So a week later, we decide to go to church together, and man, I walk into this church, and their mission statement is, we want to meet people where they are and encourage them to grow in their relationship with Jesus Christ. I was like, you want to meet me where I am? I was like, what? Not if you knew where I was.
Yeah.
Like, not if you knew what I did. And man, I hear a message preached, and it was a message about Mephibosheth. And at the end, the guard reaches down, and when I saw death coming, he offered grace. And it's just something about it in that moment. It was like I was in this giant auditorium with 5,000 people, but it was just me and that pastor sitting there, and he was telling me that God loved me. And he was telling me that God loved me so much that Jesus died for me so that I could be reunited in a right standing with God.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do anything but accept it. I couldn't do anything but bawl my eyes out.
Wow.
And I just like was there on my knees for so long. And it was like, and it wasn't just like the burden and the weight and the shame of porn. It was my whole life.
Sure.
My whole life. It's like, man, I am valued. I am loved.
Yeah.
And like, and like, that was the moment that changed the trajectory of my life.
Well, it's such a good reminder on how, we might assume that everyone knows it, or even if they've heard it before, but if God's moving on someone's heart, it's going to mean different. It's going to make a difference to them when they hear it in the right light, when the Holy Spirit is quickening something to them. And so we can't neglect the fact that, oh yeah, everyone knows about Jesus. Well, first of all, they don't. And second of all, they might have heard it before, but it wasn't real to them until God meets them where they're at and draws them to himself. And so that's such a good reminder to when we witness, or when we just spread the message, even if it's to a relative you've told about multiple times, maybe God's working on the heart and they're in a position to be ready for it. And I love how, and then that was your wife, right? that took you to church. And so, and now you're a pastor. And so, she also didn't stand in condemnation. She didn't reject you. She shared the love of Jesus with you, walked alongside you. And now you can look back in where you're at today. So two things I want to end on real quick is just, what would you say to people that, that might have guilt from things they've done in the past. Maybe they're in a new position now, but that, Satan loves to remind us of our past. And so what would you say to people that have that guilt from their past, even if they're a new creation in Christ? And then also, what would you say for people that feel like they're too far gone, like you felt? Those two things, if you want to end on that.
Yeah, I mean, that, 2 Corinthians 5:17 is real, that the old is gone and you are a new creation. So you are not, I think that's the truth that I want people to know. You are not your worst mistake, but you were also not your greatest achievement. Like God, wait, how much he loves you on a scale. He loves you because he is love.
That's so good.
He created you. So like in that love, he loves you so much, he provides you choice. He provides you free will, and you can choose to accept it. Yeah. Because he's not going to force himself into a relationship with you, because love is indicative of choice. Right. So just knowing that, man, you are not your worst mistake. Your identity does not come from your behavior. Your identity comes from the one who made you. And it's a very simplistic statement, but it's a really powerful truth. Yeah. When you believe at your core that you were created for more than living a certain way. Yeah. And I think so often people allow pain, failure, hurt, disappointment. Maybe it was self-inflicted like mine was, or maybe someone hurt you, but you allow that thing to create an obstacle in your life, and you see yourself as less than because you believe that you can't become this thing. You're not worthy of love. You could never become a husband. You could never own your own business. You could never contribute at this capacity. Right. But the reality is that's not true. That's not true. So each and every day, through hard work, you can change. That's the beautiful thing about life. At any point in your life, you can choose to start moving a different direction. Yeah. And it's not going to happen overnight. But I think that's why community is so important. Like and I would encourage also, once you start stepping in the right direction, God is going to provide you with people. Like my story is the culmination of people believing in me, encouraging me, fighting for me, telling me that they believe in me, pouring into my life. Yeah. There's one just like gigantic aspect of my story that I hadn't shared yet. I would love to if I had the time, but that's what I want to know. Like, man, get in relationship with people and share your story. Be vulnerable, be honest, be transparent, because your story, regardless of where you are currently, is going to impact someone's life. So either someone's going to be going through what you are, they are about to, or they have, and collectively you can share each other's struggles and say, hey, even though this happened, God was with me and I didn't make the right decision, but on the other side of it, God was there also. Yeah.
That's so good, because just like it's a lot of small decisions to get us to a dark place, it's also a lot of small decisions to get us out of it. Now, granted, you can accept Jesus and your whole world changes, but you still have to walk that out. You still have to walk out your salvation. That's a lot of small steps. That's why everyday discernment is so important. So, man, we could talk for another hour. I might have to have you on for part 2 down the road, but thank you so much for sharing your story. And if you could just let everyone know like where they can find you and connect with you.
Yeah. So I am Joshua Broome is my Instagram and my TikTok. We are in the process of building a website. The church that I'm a pastor of is called Known, KNWN. The O is omitted, just a little nod to Hebrew, but we're doing ministry online, and God is moving in an incredible way, and I'm just blessed that I have this opportunity. So I am Joshua Broome. Via Instagram is attached my email and all that good stuff if anyone needs to get in contact with me.
Awesome. I'll put those in the show notes. Thank you, Joshua, so much for coming on. God bless you and your family.
All right, brother. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to the Everyday Discernment Podcast. For more information on Discerning Dad, go to discerning-dad.com. Be sure to follow on all the social media platforms. Just search for Discerning Dad. Please share this podcast with a friend and leave an honest review on whichever platform you listen. Feel free to send any comments, suggestions, questions, or prayer requests at discerningdad@outlook.com. Until next time, keep fighting the good fight.